Hi everyone. Hi, good morning. Good morning everyone. So, कोई है क्या? Yes, everybody is in the classroom. So, today is 17th of June 2026 and we are going to start today's analysis of the Hindu, right? So, a very warm good morning to everyone and let's start with today's analysis now. So, today we will be also solving a few questions related to the G7 summit. So, let's start with today's session now. So now this is the first news item that we have with us, and this is an impact of El Nino geographical phenomenon which is happening or which is taking place right at this moment. And because of this El Nino impact, India's rainfall has witnessed a deficit of 35%. Earlier, the onset of monsoon used to be the last week of May, but this time monsoon in Kerala arrived on 4th of June, right? So this is the overall deficit of related because of the El Nino. There is a overall deficit, and this year it is also expected that there would be a below average rainfall, right? So this is entire this entire article is related to that particular thing only, that what are the various reasons or what are the various factors which are responsible for a deficit in the rainfall, right? And also the prime minister of our country has already warned and asked various states to prepare themselves for the impact of the El Nino, and there would be a rainfall deficit. Right now, this is something which we have to discuss in detail. This is also this news has been also discussed on page number 4. So we'll discuss this in detail on page number 4. But again, this is about the recently concluded G7 summit, 52nd edition of the G7 summit, which recently took place in Evian, France. And and students, there are two more points. Before this particular summit started, the prime minister of our country also held a lot of bilateral negotiations, so bilateral talks with the with the president of France, Mr. Emmanuel Macron. And after that he will participate. He is participating in the G7 summit, and after that he will participate in Viva Tech on 18th of May or 18th of June. And what is Viva Tech? Viva Tech is basically Europe's largest technological conference जो हर साल होती है, उसमें भी participate करेंगे मोदी. So we'll discuss it in detail on page number 4. Now this is something which is very shocking, that the government of India has banned Telegram in India until Monday. Till 22nd of June 2026 Telegram is banned. It will not work क्योंकि इसके पहले जितने भी नीट के पेपर लीक हुए थे उसमें टेलीग्राम प्लेटफॉर्म का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल रहा था. एंड दिस ईयर ऑल्सो व्हेन द रीनीट वाज अनाउंस्ड, देयर वर मल्टीपल प्लेटफॉर्म्स और द मल्टीपल चैनल्स रनिंग विद द टाइटल ऑफ रीनीट papers for the reneat. You can get access the paper of reneat 2026. So considering all those factors in mind, the government has blocked Telegram app till 22nd of June 2026 to ensure smooth conducting of Reneat, which is scheduled to take place on International Yoga Day, which is on 21st of June 2026. So as of now, there is nothing more relevant in this. It is just a government order which has blocked Telegram app till 22nd of June 2026. And you will understand that this is quite a vague step taken by the government. But again, looking at the current situation of NEET and its involvement and the role played by the platform makes it quite mandatory for the government to take this particular step, because the government wants to ensure that this time there is no paper leak. Now again, moving on to the next point. So recently we covered one news item where we discussed that the Supreme Court of India has reconstituted a high level panel to redefine Aravali Hills. Right, we have already discussed in detail that in Ray Aravali Hills definition case and other ancillary issues, the Supreme Court of India has constituted a high level committee. Now there is a petition in the court. It is filed by the Aravali Virasat Jan Abhiyan. It is an NGO. It is a group of environmentalists and activists. They have written a letter to the Chief Justice of India that the committee which has been recently constituted by the Supreme Court of India regarding the definition of the Aravali Hills, should be reconstituted. And also the member secretary are also must not be the part of the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change under its control, the letter read. So basically they want an independent expert domain committee to be constituted, and committee which is expert on the issues related to the hills, how hills should be defined and redefined. Those members should be the part of the committee instead of members from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So this is again, this will not sustain in the court, because this is a high level committee constituted by the court in itself, considering all the relevant factors in mind. And what is the current issue that we have to discuss in this particular topic? So we know this, in last year, in the month of November 2025 and December 2025, students, there were two important orders passed by the Honorable Supreme Court of India. The first order was related to the definition of the Aravali Hills, and as per the first order, any land formation which is below the height of 100 meter will not be considered as a part of Aravali Hills. And after this particular judgment was passed in November 2025, there was a pan India protest, and after that pan India protest took place, the Supreme Court of India, in December 2025, when Justice Suryakant became the Chief Justice, he kept this particular order of November 2025 in abeyance, and he directed to constitute a fresh committee to evaluate or to suggest a new definition of the Aravali Hills. Right. So now the committee has been constituted, and this expert committee will submit its report by the end of August, and the Supreme Court will take up this matter into consideration in the month of September. Right. So this is the current development, and I am pretty sure that this particular letter which has been filed, or which has been written to the Chief Justice of India, it will not sustain. Now moving on to the next point. So again, this is all political news item. We don't have to discuss anything in detail in this. Now we'll move directly to page number 4, where we have to discuss about the G7 summit. Now let's start our discussion with the G7 summit, this year's G7 summit. So 52nd G7 summit. Now students, when we talk about G7 summit, there are certain points which are extremely relevant, and this will actually boost your static GK as well. So let's talk about those particular points. So this 52nd G7 summit was hosted by France, and it took place in Evian. It's a city in France where this particular summit was hosted. This is a 2-day summit. This is a 2-day summit, and the summit will take place on 16th and 17th, 15th to 17th of. Dates are 15th to 17th June. Next important point. Now you should know the host. Host is obviously the president of uh, France, Emmanuel Macron, and the next year 53rd summit would be hosted by United States of America in 2027. Now students, when we talk about background of this particular group, that is also very relevant. But अभी हम थोड़ा सा इस बार में क्या क्या important चीजें हुई हैं उनके बारे में थोड़ा सा हम डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. Then we can move to the next important point, the entire journey of G7, how G7 came into existence. Earlier it was G6, then from G6 to G7, then from G7 to G8. Right. So let's talk about that as well. So G7 was formally formed in 1975. G7 was formally formed in 1975. Now moving on to the next point, which we should understand before we start our discussion. So G7 was formally formed in 1975. Now, when G7 was formed in 1975, it was popularly known as G6. Now, G6 became G7 in 1976 when Canada joined this prestigious when Canada joined this prestigious group. Now, Russia, there was a point when Russia was also the member of this particular group, but because of certain reasons, Russia was ousted from the group. Now, what was that reason? We'll also discuss that. So, now G6 became G7 in 1976. Now, it became G8 in 1997 with the inclusion of Russia. Now, it became G8 in 1997, but Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. And because of this particular reason, annexation of Crimea, Russia was expelled from the group in 2014. So this is an entire journey of G7, that how G7 has evolved over the period of time. Now moving on to the next point, which we should know about the G7, which are the member countries of G7. So primarily France, France, Germany, UK, Italy, United States of America. There are two more countries. Anyone who would like to tell me which are the other two countries? एक तो हमने यहाँ पर देख लिया, Canada. ठीक है, तो 6 countries, Canada, and there is one more country which is also the member of Quad, Japan. So these are the 7 countries, students, which are the members of this prestigious group known as G7. Now, students, the next relevant point related to G7 summit is, and it is extremely relevant, there is no formal binding treaty behind the creation of G7. This is an informal group. This is an informal group comprising of the one of the largest economies in the world. Now, India is not a member of G7. Please do remember this point. India is not a member of this prestigious group, but the kind of potential which India has been continuously invited uh, to participate in the G7 summit. Right? This was the 13th time in 2026. This was the 13th time. This was India's 13th appearance in the G7 summit. Now this information is also relevant. India's 13th appearance in G7 submit. So you may write down all these points. These points are extremely relevant for your examination, and if you have covered these points, so I mean you can ensure yourself that you have covered substantially enough information about G7, right? Now moving on to the next point, which you should understand, that India, China, South Korea, Kenya and Brazil. India, China, India, China, Kenya, South Africa and Brazil. These countries were invited as special guest or the observer state. So this is also important. These 5 nations along with the 7 countries participated in this particular summit. It's not South Africa, it's South Korea. Just pardon me. It's South Korea. राइट अभी नॉर्थ कोरिया को इनवाइट करने का तो कोई पॉइंट नहीं, नॉर्थ को, क्योंकि किम जोंग उनको हर जगह ट्रेन से जाना रहता है. अभी वो नॉर्थ कोरिया से फ्रांस कैसे ट्रेन से जाएंगे, राइट? सो दीज आर द पॉइंट्स रिलेटेड टू द G7 summit. Now what are the key outcomes of the 52nd G7 summit? So one common outcome of every summit which has happened after, or which has taken place after the West Asian conflict, is global peace, and the second one is a timely and a quick resolution of the geopolitical crisis. And the second important outcome of this 52nd G7 summit is human centric artificial intelligence. Right. So this is also relevant for your examination. So this is a brief summary of entire G7 summit. You may jot down these points for your examination. If they ask a question from or 52nd G7 summit, most of the questions will be limited to this particular information, right? So you may jot down all these points, and if you want, you may also take a screenshot. This is written very cleanly and very neatly, so you may have a better understanding of this topic. Now, if you have any particular question from this 52nd G7 summit topic, you may ask your question. Otherwise, we'll move to the next point as soon as possible. Any question from this particular topic, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box, or just, heart and fire wali emoji will also work at this point of time. That will work for me. Right. Is it clearly visible to you? Everything is I mean legible, right? It's, you can read all these things, right? You just tell me in the chat box section, so we can move to the next point, because at the end of this class we also have to cover a quiz. हमें क्विज भी कवर करनी है, so that is one important aspect. Now this, apart from this, there is nothing static relevant information from this particular journey is also important, which talks about how G7 has evolved since 1975. Earlier it was G6, then G6 became G7, with Canada joining it in 1976. It became G8 in 1997 after Russia joined it, but Russia was expelled from the group in 2014 when it annexed Crimea. Right. So this is all about this particular topic. Now we'll move to the next topic. And the best part about this particular summit, now that I was watching, various clips of this uh, summit. So there was a very, friendly chat between Georgia Melanie and the Prime Minister of our country, and she said to the Prime Minister that we are quite famous on Instagram, we are quite famous on social media, and recent that melody wala thing that also happened, right? So this is all about G7 summit. Now moving on to the next point. So India had a very detailed conversation with the Prime Minister, with the his Canadian counterpart, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Mark Carney, related to the free trade agreement. So India basically wanted to sign a free trade agreement with almost every country in the world, because eventually it will create a huge market for India, and it will help in achieving India's very aspirational target of becoming a 30 trillion economy by 2047. Right. So this is something which we have to understand. Now this is all political news items, that's why we don't have to discuss this. Now there are certain allegations uh, which has been leveled against the the entire management of Ram Temple. ऑलमोस्ट 200 करोड़ रुपीस का एक ऐसा हुआ कि वहां का जो दान पात्र है उसमें जो 200 करोड़ रुपए थे, वो 200 करोड़ रुपए मिसिंग है. इसको लेकर के यूपी गवर्नमेंट ने ऑलरेडी एक हाई लेवल कमिटी कॉन्स्टिट्यूट कर दी टू इन्वेस्टिगेट दीज एलिगेशंस. नाउ मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट. Air Force ferrying neat question papers by aircraft, right? So we had this particular discussion before this particular thing came into existence, that the Indian Air Force has decided that it will assist National Testing Agency in transporting re-neat question paper from one place to another place. And NTA was mocked कि भाई अब ऐसा जरूरत आ गया कि इंडियन एयरफोर्स का हेल्प लेना पड़ रहा है. बट दिस इज नॉट एक्चुअली रिलेवेंट कि किसका हेल्प लेना पड़ रहा है. द मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव इज कि पेपर अच्छे से हो जाना चाहिए. नाउ इंडियन ओशन रिम एसोसिएशन इज बीइंग एग्जामिन्ड इन द 28th मीटिंग ऑफ द. So basically now let's talk about Indian Ocean Rim Association. Any idea about what is this organization? Because a few weeks back we had a discussion about Indian Ocean Rim Association. And when I say all these topics, these meetings, these summit, they will always have a lot of questions. और इसमें स्टैटिक का बहुत सारा एस्पेक्ट इन्वॉल्व रहता है, इस वजह से ये आपके लिए काफी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती है. इंडियन ओशन रिम एसोसिएशन. Right. So basically, Indian Ocean Rim Association, when we talk about this particular group students, Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA. Now, the idea was conceived, the idea of Indian Ocean Rim Association was conceived in 1995 when Nelson Mandela visited India. So that time this idea was conceived, and and it is considered as Nelson Mandela is one of the founding fathers of IORA. Now it was formally established on 7th of March 1997. Now let's understand what is Indian Ocean Rim Association. So basically, it is an organization. It is an intergovernmental organization which was created to foster or to increase economic and marine cooperation amongst countries in Indian Ocean. That how countries in Indian Ocean can help each other in uh, economically, and how they can ensure a better marine ecosystem in the entire region. Right. Currently, there are 23 member states. Currently, this particular organization has 23 member states. So this point might be relevant for your examination. Now moving on to the next point, and we have multiple dialogue partners. China is not a part of this group. Remember this, China is not a part of this group, and there are two observers as well. So remember this, 23 member states and two observer members. ठीक है, इंडियन ओशन रिसर्च ग्रुप एंड वेस्टर्न इंडियन ओशन मरीन साइंस एसोसिएशन वियोमोसा एंड इंडियन ओशन रिसर्च ग्रुप, दीज आर द टू इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर ग्रुप. अभी क्या है कि 28th मीटिंग हुई है सीनियर ऑफिशियल्स की, जो आईओआरए ग्रुप है इसकी जो सीनियर ऑफिशियल्स हैं इनकी एक 28th मीटिंग हुई है. इस मीटिंग के टाइम पे कनाडा की रिक्वेस्ट है, दे वांट टू ज्वाइन Indian Ocean Rim Association as an observer state, and their request is currently pending with the committee. Whether now, if Canada will join, we'll have three observer members of Indian Ocean Rim Association. Now, moving on to the fourth. Now we have multiple articles in the analysis or in the entire newspaper related to the recently executed peace deal between Iran and United States of America. Right. So let's discuss all those points. Iran, United States of America, peace deal. Now, Iran has said that it is not a peace deal, it is a memorandum of understanding, and we will negotiate a peace deal during this particular time period of next 60 days, because a lot depends upon the approach of Israel, right? So let's start with our discussion related to this particular topic, and students, this is going to be very important for your examination as well. तो हम इसको बहुत डिटेल में डिस्कस करने वाले हैं, तो इसमें जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स हैं आप उन्हें प्लीज कहीं पे जॉट डाउन कर लीजिएगा, बिकॉज द डील विल बी फॉर्मली साइंड ऑन 19th of June in Geneva, Switzerland, right? So the name of this particular document is the US-Iran Preliminary Peace Accord. The US-Iran the US Iran preliminary peace accord 2026. Formally it would be signed on formally it would be signed on 19th of June 2026 in Geneva, Switzerland. Uh, Now remember this: Pakistan has played a role in this entire peace negotiation. Pakistan has played a vital role in this deal, and this deal would be signed from the United States of America. Mr. J.D. Vance, the Vice President, will sign the deal. Right. So now, when we talk about these deals, these are the certain factual points which are related to this. Now, what are the some term and conditions related to this particular deal is dependent upon, because टर्म एंड कंडीशंस ऐसा तो हो ही नहीं सकता ना कि ईरान और यूएसए के बीच में कोई पीस डील साइन हो और उसमें कुछ बड़ी बड़ी महंगी महंगी चीजें इन्वॉल्व ना हो, उसमें कुछ महंगे महंगे टर्म एंड कंडीशंस इन्वॉल्व ना हो. सो दोस टर्म एंड कंडीशंस आर आल्सो relevant when we talk about this particular issue. So the first one is the various term and conditions of this particular you know ceasefire. So let's start our discussion. We'll discuss one by one कि क्या क्या टर्म एंड कंडीशंस इंपोज किए हैं. Right, so let's discuss those term and conditions. Term and conditions. So let's start with terms and conditions now. So there are various points which we have to discuss under this heading. So the first one is an immediate ceasefire in the region. Neither Iran nor United States of America, neither Iran will attack, United States of America will attack the US infrastructure in the region or all the Middle Eastern countries. The second point is opening of Strait of Hormuz. Then the third one is United States of America will defreeze assets worth 24 billion US dollars. जो ईरान के असेट्स फ्रीज कर रखे हो ऑलमोस्ट 24 बिलियन डॉलर्स के, उन असेट्स को डी फ्रीज करना होगा बिकॉज ऑफ वन सिंपल रीजन, बिकॉज द कंट्री वांट्स टू रीस्टोर एवरीथिंग बिफोर अटैक. जिस तरीके का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर था ईरान में उसको रीस्टोर करना इज द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर रिलीज. नाउ मूविंग ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, एंड दिस इज and this is a 60-day temporary ceasefire. Now please remember this. This is a 60 days temporary ceasefire, and this 60 days temporary ceasefire will decide the fate of this particular conflict, right? And during these 60 days the diplomats will prepare for the final draft and every core thing which is necessary for a peace in the long run. Now, moving on to the next point, this peace accord will eventually benefit all the Middle Eastern countries because they have suffered a huge loss because of this entire conflict, right? So, this is a brief of this peace deal, which is to be signed on 19th of June in Geneva, Switzerland. So, you may jot down these points, then we can move to the next point, then we can move to the next point. You may jot down all these things. And this particular the announcement of this US Iran preliminary peace accord 2026 is a huge relief for every country in the world which was dependent on a Strait of Hormuz for their security needs, so for their energy needs, right? So that is one important aspect. Now if you have written down all these points, we can move to the next part of our discussion, and we'll discuss one article in detail. Rest we will leave all the articles because everybody is presenting their opinion that why this particular summit is important. Now students, moving on to the next point. Now after this particular conflict is over, now the responsibility is upon United States of America that how it will convince Israel to not bomb southern Lebanon. And United States of America has given a statement which will give you a insight that how America has planned to stop Israel from attacking southern Lebanon. They have said Syria can easily take care of, Syria can easily look after the entire issue of Hezbollah. Israel is not required to relentlessly bomb southern Lebanon, right? So this is something which we have to understand. Now moving on to the next point. So after this particular conflict, the the clock has shifted towards the Russia-Ukraine war, and Donald Trump has said it multiple times before he was elected as the 47th president of United States of America that once I am elected as the next president of United States of America, I will stop Russia-Ukraine conflict within a day. And since he has assumed office, it's been more than 17-18 months and he has failed to stop the conflict. So I mean that was the promise that he made, but his he failed to fulfill his promise. Now during this particular conflict, the vulnerability of the Gulf countries were exposed to up to a huge extent, and how these countries, Gulf countries, are dependent on the US infrastructure for their own defense and their own security. Now this particular war may be declared as a win-win by both the countries. Iran बोल सकता है हमने जीता, अमेरिका बोल सकता है हमने जीता, बट अगर ईरान इस पर्टिकुलर कंडीशन में पहुंच चुका है जहां पर वो अपने टर्म एंड कंडीशंस को डिक्टेट कर पा रहा है, then it means Iran has eventually won this war, because practically it was impossible for United States of America to win this particular war without using nuclear weapon. And this entire war started with the premise that Iran was about to develop a nuclear weapon. That's why this was required to obliterate their nuclear facilities, right? Because Iran is eventually a threat for the US security, and that's why this strike was jointly launched by the United States of America and Israel on 28th of February 2026, killing the second supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, right? And after that IRGC responded in a very apt manner. The entire infrastructure was burning, oil installations were attacked, right? But after more than 100 days, finally we have a peace deal, and we can expect this war is over. Now again, how Israel justify its position, because Israel, the words of Israel are least to be trusted, because Israel have said it multiple times, and how every time Israel has basically acted as a spoiler, right? कि वो एक नटोरियस स्टूडेंट जो होता है क्लास में उसके तरीके से आते हैं और पूरा जो सिचुएशन होता है उस सिचुएशन को स्पॉइल कर देते हैं, राइट? सो हाउ Israel could play a very important role, and somehow Israel convinced United States of America that they are a threat for your security. A country which is approximately 10 to 12,000 kilometers away from the United States of America is an imminent threat to the US security, and they don't have missiles beyond the range of 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers. Then how Israel was able to convince? So there is a continuous tension between Israel and Iran, that everybody knows. And Israel has some huge supporters. They have a very strong lobby in United States of America. That's why they get a lot of support from the United States of America as well, right? That's why they developed a nuclear weapon, and there were no sanctions. Nothing happened with them, because it was said that given the kind of history that the people of Israel or the Israeli citizens have faced, they must have a nuclear weapon, right? So these are the few things which we have to understand. Now there is a very important abbreviation when we talk about this entire issue related with Iran. This abbreviation dates back to 2015. Now this abbreviation is very important. Now what is this abbreviation called, is known as, so this particular abbreviation is known as JCPO, JCPOA, JCPOA. And what is this JCPOA? So JCPOA is basically Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. It was initiated by the then President of the United States of America, 45th, 44th President of the United States of America, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama. And under this joint comprehensive plan of action, a lot of sanctions were imposed, and also some high level scrutiny by International Atomic Energy Agency that Iran could not develop a nuclear weapon, right? And after 3 years, when Donald Trump became the 45th president of the United States of America, he unilaterally withdrew from this joint comprehensive plan of action. और ऐसा एक speculation है कि जब ये 2015 में joint comprehensive plan of action साइन हुआ था, at that time ईरान के पास में 3% enriched uranium था. But after that, when United States of America unilaterally withdrew from the joint comprehensive plan of action, अभी उनके पास में almost 60% enriched uranium है, जो वो यूज कर सकते हैं न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स बनाने के लिए. बट यू नीड 90% enriched uranium to make nuclear weapon. Now the next topic that we have with us students, it is related to a very important policy of the US government, and this policy is US H1B visa policy, because recently a court has declared this this policy as invalid, because it has not received any prior sanctions from the US Congress, right? So let's talk about this particular policy, US H1B visa policy. So first thing first, students, now this is the entire article that we have to discuss. So let's start with this article now. So H1B visa was introduced in 1990 through the Immigration Act of 1990, through the Immigration Act of 1990. And why US H1, why United States of America brought this H1B visa? What was the primary reason? So to fulfill the shortage of STEM professionals. And what is this? What are these STEM professionals? So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Right, so after industrial revolution, the next big thing in line was technological revolution. And when technological revolution started shaping the US economy, they felt that they have the shortage of STEM professionals. So what they did, they introduced a very lucrative policy, H1B visa policy, to attract a lot of STEM professionals, to attract a lot of smart brains into the United States of America. Now for a very long period of time, this has been the aspirations of many people around the world to go to United States of America. And United States of America took advantage of this particular mindset, and they introduced this H1B visa policy in 1990 through the Immigration Act of 1990. Right, there were various important provisions of the US H1B visa policy that we have to discuss. So the first one is H1B visa is primarily is given for a period of 6 years. Now let's assume there is a person who got H1B visa and he went to United States of America in December 2020. Now after 6 years, students, in December 2026, this period of 6 years will expire. Now what will happen? The person, the visa holder has to observe a cooling period of 1 year, and then reapply. Right, so what will happen? Suppose somebody from your classroom has received a US H1B visa, so he can stay in United States of America for a good period of 6 years, but after that he has to observe a cooling period of 1 year, when he has to go back to his native country or some other place in the world, and after 1 year he has to reapply for the visa. Right, now moving on to the next point, the categorization. So the categorization is, there is a maximum capping. Now this maximum capping is also important. Maximum 65,000 visas capping. Maximum 65,000 visas can be issued in a year, but additional 20,000 visas could be issued. 65,000 maximum, but ये 20,000 visas सिर्फ किन लोगों को इंट्रोड्यूस किए जाएंगे? who have who has higher education and degree, higher educational degree from a US institute. या आपने अपना मास्टर्स यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के किसी यूनिवर्सिटी से कंप्लीट किया है, या आपने अपनी पीएचडी वहां पर किसी एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट से की है, तो ही आपको 20,000 एडिशनल वीजा इशू किए जाते हैं. अदरवाइज द जनरल कैटेगराइजेशन इज ऑफ 65,000. नाउ द नेक्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट इज, इंडियंस आर द लार्जेस्ट होल्डर्स ऑफ H1B वीजा. राइट, अब रिसेंटली क्या हुआ था? लास्ट ईयर डोनाल्ड ट्रंप हैज अनाउंस्ड दैट एनीवन हु वांट्स टू कम टू यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका अंडर द यूएस H1B वीजा पॉलिसी, दे हैव टू their sponsors have to provide $100,000 fee to the Trump administration. Now, when this particular policy was announced, a lot of criticism was there. It was quite obvious. But now, finally, the court had said, and the reasoning is quite simple. ये reasoning हम already बहुत बार discuss कर चुके हैं. बहुत बार हमने reasoning discuss किया. हम एक बार इसको वापस से assert कर देते हैं. That when such a new fee or tax is to be introduced by the government in United States of America, as per the constitutional mandate, they need a prior approval from the US Congress. If they have not taken any prior approval from the US Congress, then they cannot impose any new tax, or they cannot levy any new fee. So this imposition of additional $100,000 fee was basically a kind of enhancement in the existing fee, right? So they need the prior approval of the US Congress, and that's why this particular policy was held to be invalid by a court, that they did not take the prior approval of the US Congress. So that's why this is illegal. Syria will do the job with the Hezbollah if Israel is unable, right? So finally, some kind of assurance has been, or a kind of suggestion has been given by the Mr. Donald Trump, currently who is in France participating in the G7 summit. Now moving on to the next point, and we are in the international section as well. The international section में और कुछ relevant है नहीं, World Cup is going on. So and Iran surmounts multiple obstacles to hold New Zealand. So finally Iran has played a draw with New Zealand, और बस इसके अलावा और कुछ भी नहीं. आज सेकेंड ओडीआई है इंडिया और अफगानिस्तान के बीच में. Now this is all about today's analysis, guys. Now, but again, we have a very important quiz in today's session that we will do. And if you have any question from this particular topics that we have covered, you may ask your questions. Otherwise, we will move to the question and answer section or the quiz part. Just I'll wait for a minute. If you have any question, XYZ, any kind of question, then you may ask your questions. Otherwise, we'll move to the next part. And this quiz is very important because it is based upon the G7 summit only. Any questions? Anyone who'd like to ask any kind of question, just give me a hint in the comment or the chat box section so that I can proceed with the quiz. Just give me a little bit of response in the chat box so I can proceed. Say yes or no. That's so the only thing which is required at this point of time. We can proceed now, I guess. Can you proceed? Okay, fine. Okay, fine. We will proceed now. So this is the very easy. The 52nd G7 summit scheduled for June 2026 is being hosted by France at which of the following scenic venue? Cananskis, Nice, Evian, or France? Which is the host nation for the 52nd G7 summit? We have discussed it just a few minutes back. We discussed about this particular topic. So 52nd G7 summit is hosted in Evian, France. It's a beautiful city. जो उन लोग का group photograph हुआ, formal group photograph हुआ, if you look at that group photograph, you will understand that how beautiful is that place, right? So for question number 1, the correct option is option C. Now we'll move to the next question, question number 2. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi's participation in the 52nd G7 summit marks a significant milestone in India's diplomatic engagement. This event represents India's total invitation count and consecutive attendance streak as which of the following? So I have already told you this. अब देखते हैं आपका कितना इसके बारे में आपने retain किया. 12th total participation and the 6th consecutive invite, 13th total participation and the 7th consecutive invite, 13th total participation and the 8th consecutive invite, 15th total participation and the 8th consecutive invite. आपको ये बताना है कि till date how many times India have been invited to participate in the G7 summit, और ये इंडिया का कौन सा लगातार साल है, कंटिन्यूअस स्ट्रीक है जब हमें इनवाइट किया गया G7 समिट में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए. Which is the correct option for question number 2? So anyone who'd like to answer question number 2, or I should tell you the answer, because during the discussion about the 52nd G7 summit, I have told you the answer of this particular question. So for question number 2, students, the correct option is option C. This was India's 13th participation in the G7 summit, and this is India's 8th consecutive invite for the G7 summit. हम हमेशा special invitee की तरह. So that's the aura of Prime Minister Modi, right? That every international leader loves his participation, the kind of transformation that India has witnessed in last one decade, that has given us a huge edge. Now, as part of his European tour, please be very careful with the question. As part of his European tour in June 2026, PM Modi is undertaking a historic state visit to a country that marks the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister since its independence in 1993. Name this capital city where he will meet President Pellegrini and Prime Minister Fico. Bratislava, Prague, Nice, or Evian? Which is the correct option for question number 3? Before participating in the G7 summit, he went to another country to participate, to have a bilateral communication with the leader of that country. This country was created in 1993. What is the capital of this country? Question is very simple. If somebody would have read the yesterday's newspaper, then they must be aware about this particular question. So, students, the correct option for question number 3 is Bratislava. Bratislava is the capital of Slovakia. Bratislava is the capital of Slovakia, and it was created in 1993. It was created in 1993, right? So, and after Slovakia was created as an independent state, Narendra Modi became the first prime minister to visit Slovakia. The capital of Slovakia is Bratislava, right? And we signed multiple memorandum of understandings in different area of cooperation, like defense, like education, like deep tech, right? So this meeting was also important, and I have told you multiple times that India is expanding its portfolio. So somehow it wants to become a $30 trillion economy by 2047, and all these visits will play a very important role. Now, PM Narendra Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron jointly inaugurated a landmark technology initiative on June 14th, 2026 in Nice, showcasing 120 deep tech innovators under the auspices of which union ministry? Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, or Ministry of Education? Which is the correct option for question number 4? इंडिया और फ्रांस ने एक ज्वाइंट इनिशिएटिव लॉन्च किया 14 जून 2026 को. आपको ये बताना है विच प्राइमरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल, और विच प्राइमरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आइडिया वाज दिस पर्टिकुलर इनिशिएटिव. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट भारत इनोवेट्स 2026. स्टूडेंट्स, आपको ये बताना, मैंने आप लोग को बताया था जब हम मंडे को डिस्कशन कर रहे थे अबाउट भारत इनोवेट्स. तो आपको ये बताना है विच इज द प्राइमरी मिनिस्ट्री रिस्पॉन्सिबल for Bharat Innovates 2026. It was launched in Nice, France, jointly by the President of France, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, and the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi. So it is a joint initiative of Ministry of Education. It is a joint initiative of Ministry of Education. Bharat Innovates is a joint initiative of India and France, and it is initiated by the Ministry of Education. Right. Now we'll move to question number 5. The G7 grouping was originally founded in 1975 as the G6 in the direct response to which historical global crisis? Option A, the 1973 oil crisis and financial turmoil. The second option is the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The third option is the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, or the fourth was the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. Use your logic very wisely. You will understand the question, that which particular event was responsible for the creation of G7. It was created in 1975 as G6. Canada eventually joined the group in 1976 when G6 became G7. And then Russia joined the group. Russia joined the group in 1997, and it was ousted or expelled from the group in 2014 for annexing Crimea. So for the correct option for question number 5 is option A. The 1973 oil crisis and financial turmoil was the primary reason why question number 5, why the G7 group was created, right? So it was about the global crisis. You have to look at the words as well. It was about the global crisis. How annexation of Crimean Peninsula by the Russian government could be a global crisis, right? It was something which should not have taken place, but again, it has a very limited demographic significance for the entire world, right? So for question number 5, students, the correct option is option A. Now we'll move to question number 6. Which country joined the G7 grouping in 1997, shifting the forum's format into the G8 before being subsequently expelled in 2014 over the unlawful annexation of Crimea? It's a very easy question. 4 options: Canada, Germany, Russia, or Ukraine. Which is the correct option for question number 6? It's a very, cakewalk type of questions. It's just a piece of cake. You just have to eat it. Nothing else. It's on your table. It's on your plate. So anyone who would like to answer question number 6, just please let's answer question number 6. So for correct answer for question number 6 is, students, Russia. Russia is the correct option for question number 6. Russia joined the group in 1997. Yes, absolutely correct. So now moving on to the next part of the today's discussion, question number 7. During the 51st G7 summit held in Connaught, Canada, the leaders adopted a unique environmental agreement called the Wildlife Fire Charter. This charter specifically aligns with the goals to halt and reverse deforestation by 2030 under one of the following international frameworks: the Paris Agreement 2015, the Glasgow Leaders Declaration 2021, the Kyoto Protocol 1997, or the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework 2022. Which is the correct option for question number 7? This is the second last question for the day. Question number 7. Kanashkis Wildlife Charter is based upon which international framework? So for question number 7, students, the correct option is option B, the Glasgow Leaders Declaration of 2021, which says that we have to reverse deforestation by 2030. So for question number 7, the correct option is option um, B, the Glasgow Leaders Declaration. Now, this is the last question. The 51st G7 Summit outcome document explicitly condemned an aggressive form of foreign interference described as transnational repression. What does this term fundamentally refer to? The blockading of critical supply chains and marine choke points by proxy states, the execution of deep web cyber attacks targeting national critical infrastructure. Then we have external economic coercion through arbitrary trade tariffs and mineral hoarding. And option D, states or their proxies intimidating, harming, or coercing individuals beyond their own borders. Transnational repression is basically transnational repression. What is transnational repression? Anyone? Transnational repression is option D, states or their proxies intimidating, harming, or coercing individuals beyond their own borders. So for question number 8, students, the correct option is option D. Now let me tell you one thing. Today we had done a few very important topics, and and these topics are written very neatly. The first one is US H1B visa. Then we have Iran US peace deal. Then we had Indian Ocean Rim Association, and then we have 52nd G7 summit. These are the 4 important topics. These are written very neatly. You can take the screenshot of each and every topic. 52nd G7 summit हमने अभी उस पर एक quiz भी किया है. So this entire topic is basically almost 80% done. अभी अगर कोई और development आज होगा, so we'll discuss that development tomorrow, and with that we are done with this particular topic. Apart from this particular information, they will ask nothing. Then we discuss about Indian Ocean Rim Association, because Canada ने apply किया है अभी ऑब्जर्वर स्टेट्स की तरह ज्वाइन करने के लिए. हमने इसके बारे में पूरा डिस्कस किया. 1997 में ग्रुप इनिशिएट हुआ. 23 मेंबर्स हैं, 2 ऑब्जर्वर्स, एंड कनाडा वांट्स टू ज्वाइन एज अ थर्ड ऑब्जर्वर स्टेट. देन वी हैड अ वेरी ब्रीफ डिस्कशन अबाउट ईरान यूएसए पीस डील, कि इस डॉक्यूमेंट का नाम क्या है. द यूएस ईरान प्रिलिमिनरी पीस अकॉर्ड 19 जून 2026 जेनेवा स्विट्जरलैंड में साइन होगी. पाकिस्तान हैज आल्सो प्लेड अ वेरी वाइटल रोल, और जेडी वांस विल साइन दिस पर्टिकुलर डील. देयर आर 4 इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म एंड कंडीशंस. इमीडिएट सीज फायर होना चाहिए, स्टेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज की रीओपनिंग होनी चाहिए. यूएसए ने जो असेट्स फ्रीज किए हैं 24 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर्स का, उनको डीफ्रीज किया जाएगा, और 60 डेज का टेम्परेरी सीज फायर, जिसमें एक डिटेल फ्रेमवर्क डिस्कस किया जाएगा टू स्टॉप दिस वॉर. और ईरान ने इस पीस नेगोशिएशन को क्या बोला है? दिस इज अ मेमोरेंडम ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग. नाउ ऑन लास्ट पेज यू हैव दिस इंटायर fact sheet of H1B visa policy, which was recently declared as unconstitutional or invalid by a court in United States of America. So this is all about today's analysis, and then we finally solved 8 questions specifically from the G7 summit, right? So this is all about today's class, everyone. Thank you so much, and you may like this video if you want to. I mean, I would really love to that if you like the video, and subscribe to our channel, and we will have this interaction regularly now. There were some unavoidable circumstances because of which we could not have this yesterday, but from now onwards I promise that we'll have this session every day. अगर आपको 2 इंपॉर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स, हम लोगों ने कल येस्टरडे भी डिड अ टॉपिक, 2 इंपॉर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स हैं हमारे इंडियन एक्सप्रेस के, आप उसको भी देख सकते हैं. एंड देन ऑल्सो वी हैड अ वीडियो, डेडिकेटेड वीडियो ऑन अ वीकली क्विज दैट वी कंडक्टेड रिसेंटली, जो 8 से 14 ऑफ जून के बीच में जो भी इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट्स हैं उनके आप वो भी देख सकते हैं, टू गेट अ प्रॉपर एंड कंप्लीट अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ थिंग्स हैपनिंग अराउंड यू. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much, guys. You guys are lovely. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Till then, just take a good care of yourself and people around you. Bye bye, and yeah, have a great day ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you. You may leave the class. Thank you so much, guys. Bye. See you tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye bye.